What would happen if Lightning McQueen, Francesco Bernoulli, and Jackson Storm faced off in a race? Of course, Jackson Storm would win. End of the video. Nah, there's a lot more than just being a next-generation car. The battle between Francesco McQueen and Storm has so much depth that it should be one of the battles of the millennium. And in this video, we'll explain why. But before we start, let me know in the comments, who do you think would be the winner? It's not as simple as saying that Storm, with all his technology and speed, has every race in the world won. No, my dear, because I'm sure that going in reverse, Mattel would be beating Storm. So let's not cheat and let's analyze in detail what advantages each one has. To begin with, let's analyze the speeds that these cars can reach in real life. And let's start with everyone's favorite Frenchman, Francesco Bernoulli. As we all know, this great car is a Formula One built to compete in high-speed races. It's as light as a feather, and its wings allow it to take corners at extreme speeds. A big advantage is that its tires are specific for different conditions, dry, wet, or intermediate, depending on the weather and the track. Formula One circuits are some of the most challenging, as they combine very tight corners and long straights. And that's why they can reach up to 360 kilometers per hour. In the movies, Francesco is not very far from his reality. Well, in the first races he had with Lightning McQueen, we could see that he was actually quite fast. He could even catch up to his opponents very easily. And the top speed that Francesco can reach in the movie is within his technical specifications, which tell us it's 354 kilometers per hour. One of his advantages is that, as we said, Francesco is truly a king of tight corners. It was in this situation that he overtook Lightning McQueen. But once they reached a straight line, both of them went at almost the same speed. Now let's move on to Jackson Storm. The model of Jackson Storm, although it doesn't exist in real life, is inspired by the most advanced next-generation race cars. Pixar designed this car with futuristic features based on real technology found in Le Mans cars, hypercars, and next-generation National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. Jackson Storm would be like the show-off kid. Well, its advanced aerodynamic design reduces its weight and improves its speed. And that's why he thinks so highly of himself. And as if that weren't enough, it has an internal combustion engine plus an electric one, inspired by the hybrid technologies of Le Mans cars. This allows it to combine power and efficiency. So Storm in real life could reach up to 344 kilometers per hour. And although it's a great amount of power, it's still below a Formula One car. Cars like Jackson Storm are specifically designed for high-speed races, like in National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. So, when it comes to corners, it's pretty much useless. One important thing we should highlight about Jackson Storm is that this car is specifically designed for smooth surfaces, so its little feet don't get hurt. Storm would be a perfect competitor in the modern National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing Cup Series, where the tracks are mostly oval and, more importantly, top speed matters most. Just to give you an idea, his aerodynamic design is perfect for tracks like Daytona or Talladega. In the movie, Jackson amazed us all with the incredible speed at which he overtakes all his competitors. Even McQueen himself was a piece of cake for this new rookie. Well, according to the data from his technical sheet and the information given to us in the movie, Storm can reach 220 miles per hour, practically the same speed as a Formula One car. In real life, of course, we already saw that in real life Storm wouldn't be as fast as in the movie. However, there are several aspects that aren't considered. First of all, Jackson is a character who will improve with every race he has, even though he's just at the beginning of his career. It's expected that Jackson Storm will increase his speed thanks to all the experience and technique he gains. He can definitely become very fast. Also, it seems like Storm doesn't use all his power on the track. Well, we can see that in the race he had with McQueen. He only reached 210 miles per hour. And with just that speed, he managed to overtake more than half of the participants. To catch up with Lightning McQueen, now I can't imagine what would happen if he used 220 miles per hour. His face reflects this. Well, in none of the races does Jackson really look like he's being pushed. But anyway, it seems that up to this point, Jackson would still be the winner, right? Well, don't get ahead of me. Now let's move on to analyze Lightning McQueen, since he'll be a very important part. From the very beginning, we could tell that, besides being arrogant, McQueen was a great racer. At his best, McQueen shattered his opponents, even the king himself. And this is a very important fact to understand who would win between Francesco, Jackson, Storm, or McQueen, continuing with Lightning McQueen. His model doesn't exist in real life either. It's a combination of cars used in National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing races, but also of sports cars like the Corvette C6 and a few elements from the Dodge Viper. And one of the features these three vehicles share is that they're quite aerodynamic. That's why they can reach high speeds in a very short time. And this is a pretty interesting detail, since National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing cars can reach a top speed of 220 miles per hour. So, basically, Francesco, Storm, and McQueen could reach the same top speed. The curious thing is that in real National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing races, the top speed the cars reach is 180 miles per hour. This is because of the traffic on the track, all the turns we find, and of course, the strategy each racer uses. National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing cars are designed to maintain stability at high speeds on straightaways and wide turns, sacrificing some maneuverability compared to Formula 1 cars. But the movie already showed that this rule isn't always followed. With Lightning McQueen, well, even though it's a bit harder to maneuver these types of vehicles, McQueen goes for it. Some pretty crazy strategies to escape from his opponents. The wild guy even throws himself at the cars that are all crashed to fly off the track. Also, after getting lost around, Springs learned many more techniques that couldn't be applied in a real car. Like driving on dirt roads and doing his drifts Fast and Furious style. And the same goes for the technique of driving in reverse that Mater taught him. And this, my friends, it's a big advantage that gives Lightning McQueen extra points compared to Francesco and Jackson Storm. And what about Lightning McQueen's speed? In the movie, we've seen that he can reach 196 miles per hour, but he could easily reach 220 miles per hour. Well, at least we saw that when he raced against Francesco, the two of them almost tied on a straight line. So, combining Lightning McQueen's experience with the power he had at that moment when he faced Francesco, he definitely could have crushed him on the track. And we have to make something very clear. Maybe Jackson Storm is the one who surpasses everyone because of his technology and great aerodynamics. But realistically, he couldn't apply techniques like the ones Lightning McQueen was taught, and he could do even less than that, poor Francesco. We have as an example the race between Lightning McQueen and Francesco. At this point in McQueen's life, he already had experience from his past races in the Piston Cup, he had all the techniques that Doug Hudson taught him, and he learned to master dirt tracks. These things gave him an advantage over Francesco, because even though Francesco was already built to handle these tight turns, McQueen was able to adapt quickly with a bit of technique. And in fact, Francesco himself took advantage of this design feature, since it was specifically in the tight turns when he was able to overtake Lightning McQueen and take the lead. But it was only a matter of seconds before Lightning McQueen was almost tied with Francesco. Because on the straightaway, both of them can reach the same speed? Another important thing is that at this point McQueen was very motivated by the races he had won. He still had enough strength and power to face a car of this category. So he was no longer a rookie, he was an experienced racer. And in fact, we might even think that Francesco got overconfident. But McQueen was so sure of his power that he didn't even try too hard to beat Francesco. On the other hand, Francesco was giving everything his engine could offer. And even so, Francesco was the same age as Lightning McQueen for this race. In case you didn't know, they were both 25 years old. And what happened with Jackson Storm's race? Well, here Lightning McQueen really wasn't a rookie anymore. He was an experienced racer, and his best years were already behind him. On the other hand, Jackson Storm was at his best. He was the new rookie who, besides having a lot of energy, was equipped with technology that no race car had ever seen before. He even trained without having to go out on the tracks. And even though this seemed like a big advantage for Jackson Storm, it was also a disadvantage. Because there's nothing better than real experience. What if it rains, or he gets a flat tire from another car hitting him? Or what if someone throws a soda onto the track? From the very beginning, Jackson Storm made it clear that he was the fastest of them all. Just check this out. He passed Lightning McQueen faster than you can blink. He broke the record for the fastest lap, not just once, but twice. And on top of that, he passed more than half of the competitors in a matter of seconds. Remember, there are only 11 racers in total. What kind of technology was this? Pretty crazy, right? It's logical to think that at that moment, Storm was going to beat everyone, even Lightning McQueen, but come on, guys. McQueen was already too old to reach his full potential, and even though he was older and more worn out, McQueen was able to reach 196 miles per hour. A pretty decent number for a veteran who had already raced most of his life. On the other hand, Jackson Storm reached a top speed of 210 miles per hour, which is pretty impressive, since being a rookie, we can assume that this speed will keep increasing. He could even surpass the 220 miles per hour that Francesco and Lightning McQueen could reach. Considering all these factors, honestly, it was asking a lot of Lightning McQueen to win this race against the Maniac Storm. But also, Storm had a very easy race, since it was a track that completely favored his design. If it had been a mixed race, I'm sure Lightning McQueen would have taken advantage of all the experience and techniques he learned throughout his life racing. Here, Storm would have been in trouble. Since being a rookie and not having real experience, he wouldn't have been able to apply techniques on this type of track. And even if he had wanted to try Lightning McQueen's jump because he's so aerodynamic, he would probably fly off and turn into an airplane. So age really does matter when it comes to knowing who would actually be the winner. And you might say that the answer still seems obvious, that Storm would be the winner. But now let's move on to the next part. The same thing happened during Lightning McQueen's race against the more experienced veterans. He left them in the dust on the track. Also, let's consider that Lightning McQueen was at his best, able to reach his full potential. The same thing happened when he faced Jackson Storm. He was at his youngest and most energetic. Just take the example of the King. The poor guy in his humble retirement barely made it through. If McQueen had pushed himself too hard, his engine could have even blown up from overexertion. On the other hand, when he faced Francesco, that was also one of the best moments. Well, besides still being young, he was no longer a rookie and had a lot of experience from all the races he had. For this reason, even though Francesco is designed for high speeds, McQueen would have been able to beat him. Well, he had techniques that Francesco himself could never have imagined in his life. But all these techniques wouldn't suit Francesco because of his design. Just imagine him jumping like McQueen did. Poor Francesco would certainly destroy himself due to his fragility upon touching the ground. Also at this point, McQueen knew very well how to control the track. Because of all the drifting he did in Radiator Springs, just imagine if Francesco had tried to perform any of these techniques. For sure, even his lungs would collapse. And speaking of speeds, McQueen could reach up to 220 miles per hour in the race against Francesco if he wanted to. But in the race against Jackson Storm, he barely reached 196 miles per hour, while that jerk Storm was able to reach 210 miles per hour. It might seem like a small difference, but it really makes a big impact. Also, that's not all. Let's see what advantages and disadvantages each one has. McQueen, although he doesn't say it, has a diploma in drifting, thanks to his training with Doug Hudson and his misadventures in Red Door Springs. Who needs to brake when you can drift? On tracks with tight turns or dirt roads? McQueen is the king. He knows how to stay calm under pressure, but his weaknesses take away his power. McQueen is fast, yes, but he can't compete in pure speed against next-generation cars like Storm or against a Formula 1 like Francesco. It's like believing your Beetle could beat a Tesla. Let's be honest, McQueen isn't a kid anymore. In Cars 3, he felt like he was on the verge of meeting St. Peter. On the other hand, Jackson Storm can reach over 344 kilometers per hour without breaking a sweat. He's like a Ferrari fueled by Red Bull. In a straight line race, he's uncatchable. He has sensors, simulators, artificial intelligence, and he probably even hacked McQueen's Wi-Fi too. Storm's design gives him a huge advantage. He cuts through the wind like a knife through butter. Ideal for high-speed tracks. Also, Storm doesn't just race, he throws a stream of toxic mentality at you to demotivate you. But even though he's way up there, very technological, Storm also has his weaknesses. Storm doesn't have McQueen's control on tough terrain. He's the typical luxury car that can't handle a pothole without whining. If the track isn't perfect, Storm starts slipping like a deer on ice. He's so arrogant, he relies so much on his speed that he underestimates his opponents. So Francesco Facile could give him a beating. And speaking of Francesco, this guy goes from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 2.5 seconds. Besides, if you need to master a short track, Francesco is the king. Thanks to his Formula 1 design, Francesco can take tight turns without losing speed. Francesco not only races fast, he also knows how to destroy his opponents mentally. His overconfidence makes him psychologically immune. If Storm tried to talk trash to him, Francesco would reply with something like, "Ah, but I'm handsome, and you?" He is the lightest of the three. If the race is on a track where weight matters, Francesco has the advantage. The downside of his design is that it only works on smooth tracks like glass. Put him on a dirt road and he gets stuck like a toy car. Another thing pretty depressing is that if you give Francesco a slight bump, he ends up crying all the way to the shop. You might be wondering why I'm telling you all this. Well, we've reached the final part of the video. If these three vehicles faced off in their prime and at the same age, who would be the winner? Honestly, it really depends on the type of track. Let's suppose all three face off at the age of 25, when they're no longer rookies but not too old either. Also, they would have experience and a few techniques developed to use on the track. At this point, we know that Francesco and Lightning McQueen are capable of reaching 220 miles per hour, while Jackson Storm would be right there with them. It seemed like everyone was going to end up in a tie, right? But it's not that simple. Well, if it were a track like the ones we saw in the Piston Cup, you need a lot of speed, strategy, and to handle the turns at high speed. At this point, Lightning McQueen would have already been trained by Hudson Hornet and would know how to drift like a true champion. So here, the least qualified would be Jackson Storm, since his simulation videos can't compare to all the experience Lightning McQueen would have. Lightning McQueen would probably be a bit more challenged by Francesco, since he takes a big advantage on the curves. But we saw that wasn't enough to stop Lightning McQueen in Cars 2. So because of all that agility and strategy he has to execute his moves, Lightning McQueen would be able to win the battle against Francesco Bernoulli. And as for Francesco, against Jackson Storm, Francesco would end up being the winner. Since Storm is only a beast on straight tracks, and circuits like that are rarely seen. That's why Cruz Ramirez was able to beat Storm, because of all the knowledge she had. So there you have it, friends. Speed isn't everything if you don't have technique, experience, a strong mindset, and a lot of strategy. But if you're still not convinced, here are some other examples. Number 1. Straight race. Pure speed. Winner. Jackson, Storm, McQueen, and Francesco try. But Storm is literally a bullet. While they're saying Cachao and Shayo, Storm is already crossing the finish line. Number 2. Technical circuit with tight turns. Winner, Francesco Bernoulli. Turns are Francesco's strength. McQueen could be close thanks to his drifting skills. But Storm would look ridiculous on these tracks because he doesn't even know how to handle his own torque. Number 3. Dirt road or mixed track. And we already know who's the boss on this track, Lightning McQueen. This is where McQueen shines. His drifting, his training with Doc Hudson, and his street talent make him the champion. Francesco ends up with dust on his tires, and Storm loses his cool because he can't use all his speed. Number 4. Psychological race. Who can endure more mentally? Winner, Francesco Bernoulli. Storm and McQueen get frustrated with Francesco's egotistical comments. While they get stressed, Francesco keeps saying, Francesco always wins because Francesco is the best. So, if we combine all the skills, we can conclude that McQueen has experience and versatility, Storm has speed and technology, but he doesn't know how to handle himself well outside his comfort zone. Francesco has pure technique, but he's too fragile. And with all this analyzed, we end up with McQueen winning because of his adaptability. He's like that guy who maybe isn't the fastest or the strongest, but he knows how to survive in any environment. And so Francesco and Storm are left fighting for second place, which would clearly go to Francesco. We'll end this analysis here. Leave your thoughts in the comments. What did you think? We'll read your comments.